there's the image of this cosmic organism's life cycle as a cycle, a life cycle, and then this way of seeing it as ever expanding, ever changing, eternally becoming and never repeating itself. Um, is there any greater reason to opt for one image over the other? Um, or is that really just a matter of what resonates with your own soul at any given moment?
Well, yeah, we need both. Um, there's both something cyclical and something historical, say, about how the universe unfolds. Something, um, yeah, whereby there's a pattern which repeats, but there's also um, a forward trajectory. So, I mean, this is why I think the concept of concrescence is so valuable because it integrates both of these. It's both cyclical, or in Whitehead's terms, iterative. It's repetitive, um, a cycle, but it's also, he would say, cumulative in the sense that every concrescence, when it achieves its satisfaction, it then adds itself to sort of the data that the next round of concrescence will integrate. And so there's an iterative and a cumulative aspect to it, so that the universe is creating itself through these cycles of repetition and, you know, feeling and incorporating the past, but that there's also a cumulative dimension because no two iterations are ever exactly the same because they include the just prior concrescences, right? And so the universe is growing at its edges through this process of concrescence. And this is that secret formula Whitehead has as his definition of concrescence, that the many become one and are increased by one with each round, right? So that it's not simply repetitive. The universe is never the same twice. And that's an evolutionary process, right? That's like his generalization of evolution, where you get inheritance of the patterns of the past, but also each organism creates an opportunity for variation on that past, and those variations which prove successful. And we don't have to just reduce this to natural selection. Um, Success could mean that a mutation or a variation brings more aesthetic joy, then that's passed on to the next generation.
Mhm. What do you think of the existence of non-empathetic human beings? How do you think of that in relation to the creative necessity of evil?
Well, yeah, I mean, a perfectly harmonious world would become boring pretty quickly. Um, you know, Pleasantville doesn't have any color, doesn't have any eros that's like pulling the evolutionary process forward. And Whitehead's account of evil, I think, is one of the most powerful aspects of his cosmology and his process theology. You know, where evil is novelty, but a particular society refers to something as evil because it's novelty in the wrong season, as he would put it, because it disrupts our settled habits. It disrupts our mores, our morality.
I feel that, but no one calls an earthquake evil, even though it's a
Mm,
tragedy. And so you just want, like, maybe the desire to eradicate, like, evil is it's personal. It's all about, like, I read a book
yeah.
called the Anatomy of Evil, and it was a traumatizing book because, like, this guy has categorized, like, the levels of evil and then takes you through instances of it. And, obviously when you get all the way to the end, you have, like, torture as art, right? And that that there's so many other ways to add novelty to reality, even ones that involve, like, suffering. And, like, it seems, I wonder if my illustration of, like, what if we woke up and it was all loving human being, like, wouldn't we have lost something? I I wonder if that's silly. And as long as you still have nature doing what it does, and you have, say, an earthquake or a storm, there are factors outside of you that are gonna, sweep away your city one day. Like, I don't know if we'd feel the absence of a real evil, which is like a personal and willing, pleasure in destruction. And now, but before you answer that, but then we talk about a pan-experientialist universe in which, okay, even if we eradicated what we consider to be human evil, insofar as what we're dealing with in this physical sphere are sensation-seeking, orbs of experience, then anything destructive has some kind of willing behind it, some kind of intensification for something. And that's what, we pinpointed as evil with a human, is that something is getting pleasure, pain as art. But if it's all creative from many angles, maybe there's not as much of a distinction between an earthquake and, a psychopath as you might think. What do you think of that?
Yeah, I mean, this is a bit of a difference that exists between my two philosophical heroes, like Schelling and Whitehead. Schelling would, I think, agree with what you're articulating, that evil is a uniquely human capacity, because we as free beings are constantly in a situation where we decide between good and evil. Whereas in nature, even if there's experience pervading everything, that degree of free conscious decision is not yet especially notable. Like, we don't blame.
Because I step on bugs and there's not malice behind it.
Right. A mama bear protects her cubs and eats and dismembers a human being. We don't say that's evil, that's instinct, right? Animals are not evil. And similarly with natural disasters, human beings might interpret them as acts of God, but as we've become more secularized, we tend not to do that.
In considering the consciousness of the sun, its thoughts, insofar as it's conscious, would be related to possible actions. So we have to think then, what possible actions can the sun have? And one of them is firing out solar flares or coronal mass ejections. It's doing this all the time. The internet would go down, no one would see us on YouTube, all sorts of terrible things would happen. So the sun has possible actions that it can choose among, and I imagine that would be one of the areas its consciousness would be directed to, the whole solar system and the way in which it can modulate what's going on within the solar system, which is in a sense its extended body.
Perhaps it's a manifestation of his love, this limitation, perhaps this recurring, I guess, setback or something